Hi everyone, today we are very lucky to be joined by Mrs. Staves, who is one of our computer science teachers here at NLCS. So thank you for joining us.
No problem.
The first question I have for you is, can you tell us a bit about your personal journey to becoming a computer scientist?
So when I was at university, the internet was very new and really email wasn't what we have at the moment. You had to actually write commands in to access your emails. But I became really interested in the internet, and I was actually originally doing a psychology degree. But because of my interest in the internet, I decided to do a master's in IT. And doing that master's, I learned all about programming in C, all about web design, and all sorts of different things. And through that, especially through my final project for that master's, I then went on to work in web development. So I taught myself a language called VBScript and ASP, and got a job in London as a web developer for 2 years. But after having commuted into London and worked in industry, I decided that really I wanted to do something that was a little bit more beneficial, and decided to do my PGC in teaching, which then led me on to becoming at first an IT teacher for a few years, and then I became a head of department in a grammar school in Essex, and I converted the IT department into a computer science department, and then I came here. So that's my journey, really.
And my second question for you is, what are your thoughts about the role of women in computer science?
I think it's really important that we have diversity in the workforce in computer science, and not just women, but people from all sorts of different backgrounds. At the moment, it's very dominated by white males, and they all share the same perspective. I think if you get more women and people from different backgrounds and cultures working in computer science, then it means the algorithms that are going to be written and the hardware that's going to be designed will actually suit more people. A lot of things are designed just for men. So, for instance, mobile phones are better for men's hands because they're quite big. When people test algorithms, often they might have a racial bias or a gender bias, or they might just not have thought of including some things that women might find useful. I think some of the original health trackers didn't include anything about menstrual cycles, for example. So I think the more diversity we have in the computer science workforce, the better, because it's going to make the software and the hardware better for everybody.
Yeah, I completely agree. The third question I have for you is, who is the one woman, past or present, that has really inspired you the most?
I think the one woman that I knew was my first head of department, who I worked for. She previously worked in the Ministry of Defence, and she actually wrote code that was used with missiles. She became a computer scientist. It would have been in, I think, 50s, sort of late 50s, early 60s. And she was one of very few women to actually do computer science in those days, and she sort of had to fight to get her voice heard. And eventually she had children, and then she decided that she was going to take a step away from that and left the Ministry of Defence and became a teacher and then became a head of department. But she was a really interesting woman with a really interesting background.
Also, lots of people think that coding is just for making games. But what do you think, what other kinds of apps can coding actually be used for?
So first of all, there are lots of different apps that could be created that would be quite useful. So especially, again, things that are maybe for women that haven't been thought of, but apps that would help people find good places for things like breastfeeding, or for changing children. Also, apps that maybe rate bus stops in terms of safety for women. But also, programming is used, the most powerful use of programming is when it's combined with other subjects. So if you became a bioengineer, for example, you'd be writing code for pacemakers, or you might be writing code to try and simulate COVID, to try and work out the vaccine. There's a lot of coding in scientific research where scientists actually write their own programs because they want to analyse the data in a particular way. So finance also uses a lot of algorithms to sort of sell stocks and shares and do all the trading. So there is a huge array of jobs, especially sort of engineering jobs, finance jobs, scientific jobs that would use some element of coding.
do you think are some of the major advances in computing that we'll see in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think things will carry on getting faster and faster. I think the main thing is artificial intelligence. I mean, it's already pretty embedded into our everyday lives, but I think we'll probably see that becoming even more so. We might see that jobs get taken, but I think also jobs will be created because of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence might mean that some companies become more productive, which means that they can then employ more staff. Also, artificial intelligence might be used to augment existing jobs. So you might find that it's used to spot sort of potential tumours, but then experts would look more deeply at those scans to actually cast their professional eye over them to decide whether they actually are tumours or not. So it might actually be used to augment existing jobs rather than completely replacing them. We might find that there's a lot more sort of augmented reality. I think quantum computing is an area that's really interesting, and I think one business, I can't remember who it is, but they've actually got a quantum computer now and are going to use it, but it's still at very, very early stages, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
It sounds very exciting.
Yes.
And my final question for you is, what is the coolest gadget or tech that you have seen recently?
Oh my goodness. That's a really tricky question. The coolest tech, to be honest, it's a really boring answer, but I really like those folding phones. I think they're really interesting. Yeah. Be interesting to see where they go as well, and whether they make something that can fold out to be really big. But yeah, I think that's probably the most interesting gadget. To be honest, there haven't been that many gadgets, any new sort of gadgets at the moment. Even the Apple iPhones have kind of stalled, and they're not really changing them very much. The only thing that they've added on are 5G. So, and also a lot of the big demos and things have been cancelled this year because of COVID. So I haven't really seen anything that's particularly exciting, but hopefully in the future that will change. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking part in this interview, and we'll hope to see you soon on Tech Talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you.